Hello everyone and welcome to another episode in our Talk Travel series. Well, today is your introduction to Latin America. And of course, as you know, our series is here to really inspire, but also to inform you about that destination, how to get there and what there is to do and see when you get there. But this is a real sort of double whammy for us today because I am so delighted to be introducing you to a brand new member of our team, Kerry, who is a specialist actually in South America and is going to be doing the presentation today. No pressure, Kerry. But yeah, it's so nice to have you on board. And what I would say is that we haven't got anybody in our team right now that specializes in that area. So, you know, not only is it lovely to have you with us, but it's also fabulous to have a specialist in South America. And I'm really looking forward to your presentation today. One thing I would say, just for you guys, is that Kerry's past life, she was with G Adventures, which the name sort of tells you, it's an adventure tour operator. But as Kerry will tell you, there's many different ways of having adventure, right the way through from zip lining across the treetops to, you know, sort of luxuriating and chatting with local people and learning new recipes on how to cook. So there's different ways of really immersing yourself into a destination. And although Kerry will be sharing with you a lot about G Adventures, she will also back me here when she said, because she's also been in a travel agency for many years, has many years of experience, that we always, as an independent travel agent, always recommend to you the best tour operator that will suit your needs. So I'm going to stop rambling and I'm just going to pass you on to Kerry, who is going to take us to Latin America today. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Great to be here.
Let's see whether or not this screen sharing and presentation works, because we've had a few problems this morning, haven't we?
Haven't we just? Yes. So shall I go ahead and start the sharing now, Anne? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Okay, so I'll just pop that one on now. Yeah. So can we all see the lovely little sloth sky? Okay, brilliant. So, and I've just seen that my video's gone off there. So hopefully, there we go. Right. Okay. So, yeah, hello. I'm Kerry. As Anne mentioned, I'm the newest member of the lovely team here at Delmar, so I'm really excited to be here. And as she said, no pressure. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about Costa Rica and Peru in a little bit more kind of focus, really. But just to start with, Costa Rica in particular is somewhere that I've spent quite a lot of time. I did a study abroad program there and kind of saw lots of different sides of that country, but also Central America in general, and then later on traveled to South America. As you can see, there's a picture of me at Machu Picchu a couple of years ago, playing some air guitar, which I think was Meatloaf or something equally lovely at the time. So yeah, starting with Costa Rica, it's in Central America, which is a little curly bit between Mexico and the US and then South America. So it's the area that we know as the Pacific Ring of Fire, which means that it's basically got this massive spine of volcanoes going all through it, which means that in terms of its landscape, it's really diverse. We're talking rainforests, of course, the volcanoes, beautiful beaches, as well as lots of other sort of aspects of it, which make it really unique. But you can see there as well, just a general area. Central America is quite small, so you can kind of travel around it quite easily between the different countries. And they all offer something quite different. There's a bit of information there as to how to get there. Myself, when I've spent time in both New York and Madrid, but you can fly there directly from London Gatwick with British Airways. So that is an option if you'd like to just, you know, get there as soon as possible. And there's Costa Rica. So let's start with some facts. So yeah, Costa Rica, one thing that I truly love about it, and I always sort of tell everybody, is just how diverse it is for such a small country. So yeah, it actually only takes up 0.3% of the world's land mass, but holds 5% of its biodiversity. It's just packs you with a punch with all the different animals, wildlife, the landscapes, like I mentioned before. The other thing I love about Costa Rica is the pura vida, laid back kind of way of life. The people that you meet are warm, friendly. It's a very laid back kind of feel about the place. They abolished their military in 1948, so they invested that money into education, so actually has one of the highest literacy rates of all of Latin America. So team that with kind of the natural biological sort of side of it, 200 volcanoes, just makes it a really diverse kind of country. That's the word you're probably going to be hearing a lot today, diversity with Latin America. So this is beautiful Monteverde cloud forest, which you'd likely visit if you do a trip there. So the best time to visit Costa Rica, they don't have a rainy season as such. They call it the green season, and if you could believe it, that's when Costa Rica is even greener than usual. So mid-November to April is the driest time to go, but for those reasons I mentioned before with regards to its topography and how it's kind of set about with all those volcanoes and different altitudes, you're likely to experience a short shower wherever you are in the country at whatever time of year, but you just kind of go with it because it's Costa Rica, and yeah, it's going to enable you to see lots of unusual different wildlife, different kind of butterflies and things like that. Yeah, so I love a good old map. So here we go. I've dotted with little hearts the areas that you are likely to see if you do a tour there, or of course a tailor-made trip. Those are in red, and some of the lesser traveled, maybe more unusual areas I've put with purple hearts. So first we have Aguero National Park, which literally translates as land of the turtles. So Costa Rica is a really key nesting site for some of them quite endangered species of turtles. And a lot of trips and itineraries will take you to Aguero National Park, where it's only actually accessible by boat or by air. And it's just a really complex kind of system of waterways, mangroves and things like that. So you see all sorts of different birds there. If you're there at the right time of year, you can also release turtle hatchlings into the sea, which is just one of those experiences that you'll never forget. Paranal volcano, which is the youngest and most active volcano. So there's some lovely accommodations there where you can kind of see the lava flowing out of the volcano at night time. Within the national park itself, you can go horse riding. There's quite a strong element of wellness in this area. So if you're into kind of yoga, you can just kind of do some relaxing or kind of mindful activities there as well. Monteverde, which is the cloud forest area, so kind of underneath the canopy. So already you can see these three areas that I've mentioned are all very different to one another, and this kind of helps to sort of showcase, I guess, how diverse the country is. And Manuel Antonio is another national park, which is obviously close to Capos. So this is another national park where you can relax on really beautiful white sandy beaches. I remember being there and just kind of being in the sea, looking back and just seeing all these, it's like rainforest, these trees with monkeys and parrots, and it really is like a paradise down there. It's really lovely. So for the areas that, if you've got a bit more time in Costa Rica, somewhere like Tamarindo is lovely as well. Again, this is kind of the coastal area of the Nicoya Peninsula. So some of the best beaches in the world are up there. If you're a bit of a beach bum like myself, it's nice to go up there and have a bit of a chill after, if you've done another itinerary around the country, you can just head over there for a few days afterwards. And like I mentioned before, kind of wellness, and you could learn to surf up there. And then for real wildlife, photography buffs, Corcovado National Park, which is the Osa Peninsula, which is down in the south there. It's a little bit harder to get to, this one. I think it's about 6 hours by road from San Jose. And again, some parts of it you can get to, you have to fly in there. So you'd probably fly from San Jose. And that is, again, that's for like super wildlife experts. You could also go diving down there if you wanted to. And then Puerto Viejo, which is another beach town on the Caribbean side. So again, turtle nesting season does happen along this side, so you would be able to experience that. But also it's a really handy crossing point into Panama. and it's quite easy to cross the borders there. So we could do that for you as a tailor-made part of a trip, and you could perhaps visit some islands off Panama. As you can tell, I can probably go on about this for some time, but I don't have much time today. But yeah, Panama is maybe for another time, but an incredible place also. So yeah, just to touch on some of those natural landscapes you would experience. To the left, we've got the Poas volcano, which is one of the largest volcanic craters in Central America. And that's just a short bus journey from San Jose. It's really incredible, just a gentle stroll through, beautiful gardens, you see, again, lovely birds. Plant life there that I've not seen anywhere else, just really beautiful tropical flowers and orchids. And then to the right, waterfalls are a really common sight in Costa Rica. So whether you're doing a tailor-made trip with a guide or a guided tour with other people, you'll likely stop off at any point to kind of take photos of waterfalls, because they'll just be at kind of like the side of the roads as you're driving along. And the next slide is of Paranal National Park. So this is the volcano that I mentioned before, which is featured on many itineraries. And there are beautiful, luxurious accommodations which are kind of based just outside the national park, and you do have views which are just like this. It's really incredible. Okay, and yeah, so Costa Rica is really a haven for wildlife enthusiasts, I would say. The photo of the top left there is of a hummingbird. So in Costa Rica, there are 50 different species of hummingbirds that are native to Costa Rica, I believe, out of 350. So there's quite a big sort of density of them there. And that photo is actually from one of my friends who was a G Adventures tour guide, who was really into photography. So we've got the little tree frogs. You'll just see those like hiding inside flowers. You know, they could fit on a 10-pence piece. They're just tiny and so beautiful. The monkeys, howler monkeys, they make a lot of noise, but you do really know that you're somewhere tropical when you're there and you can hear them. And the parrots as well, so the scarlet macaws. My first trip to Costa Rica, I remember just hearing this absolute racket and thinking that it was some monkeys having a fight. Like, it was so loud, and I looked up and there were 6 of them just flying overhead, and it was these parrots, and they were just incredible. They're quite huge as well. And that is just kind of an example of, you know, if you go to one of these national parks and you're there for a few days, you know, you don't have to do anything that's super strenuous to get out there and see stuff like this. It's just all on the doorstep. It really is amazing. I mentioned before about the turtles. So that's a baby leatherback turtle. And as I said, depending on the time of year that you decide to go to Costa Rica, you'll see different types of turtles that are there for their own individual kind of nesting seasons. So truly a haven for wildlife enthusiasts, bird watchers as well. And you could just see so many different species of different animals. And this slide doesn't even touch upon the big cats, and there's known colonies of ocelots and jaguars, especially in Aguero, as well as the crocodiles. You'll see some of these crocodiles are absolutely huge. Yeah, so I would love to go back, hopefully one day soon. Here is Monteverde National Park. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of kind of the kind of beaches, really, which are just stunning. And you could take little boat trips around there as well. So accommodation. So sometimes I guess there's a bit of a misconception with adventure travel. A lot of people ask me, you know, are you roughing it? And the answer is no. There really is a diverse range of accommodation in Latin America, and depending on the level of tour that you do and the travel style that you do, depends on how you would, you know, the accommodation that you would stay in. And of course, if we do a tailor-made itinerary for you, then we can hand pick the hotels as per your requirements, really. So in Costa Rica, it offers anything from kind of rustic rainforest lodges to, as you can see, luxurious, the Paranal Manoa resort down there, which is in view of the volcano. It's got a lovely spa and a swimming pool. To staying in the old fuselage of an aircraft, that's in Manuel Antonio. And I don't have images of it on here, but that's been made out to be like a really very comfortable suite. So you have got a really good range of accommodations here. So as an example of one of the G-Adventures tour itineraries, you can see that this touches upon quite a lot of the places that we've talked about. So with G-Adventures and similar tour companies, their kind of aim is to get a little bit further under the skin of the country that you're going to. So this particular tour is a tie-in with National Geographic. And here, the travellers, you would get to experience kind of meeting a National Geographic researcher at Monteverde National Park. So learning a little bit more about that unique national park and what makes it special. To doing a coffee cooperative tour, learning how the coffee beans are harvested, roasted, getting to try lots of really beautiful coffee, and the Sea Turtle Conservation Centre as well. So you get to do those little extra bits that just with a little bit more kind of delving a little bit deeper into the country, I guess. Okay. So, okay, so one of my slides, sorry, has not saved over this one, but don't worry about that. I had an image there of a man ziplining, which is also, again, I think it might be a preconception about adventure travel, which of course you can do those activities if you like, but by no means is it a prerequisite to be able to do one of these tours. The whole idea really is to travel with a local person. I always said my favourite thing about G-Adventures and similar tour companies was the guides, because they have such unique local knowledge that you might not find yourself. Meeting other people in the group, so you travel with groups of up to 12 people normally with this company, and of course meeting and connecting with people from other cultures and supporting local businesses and communities. And yeah, aside from what we mentioned before about tailor-making trips, which of course we can do, we would sit with you and learn exactly what it is that you're wanting to see and do. G-Adventures and other tour companies which are similar also have their own kind of travel styles, and we can match the tour style to you really, and what it is that you want to do. So whether it's National Geographic, which are kind of upgraded, kind of more 4-star, down to kind of your more basic local living or rail journeys. So there really is something for everyone. And community tourism is also important. So responsible travel. I think especially when we're talking about people's bucket list items, and kind of wanting to have a really memorable trip. For me, at least, it's always kind of, I always remember the people that I've met along the way, and kind of they always have an impact on you, and you learn a bit more about their story. And you know, community tourism is led by and kind of facilitated by those people, and you're seeing the very best of their community and learning from them. So it's really lovely, especially when you're going to countries which have such rich cultures. So these are just some examples of the different kind of projects you might experience in Latin America. So in Belize, for example, you've got the little lad there in the top corner who is a tour guide in Belize on Key Corca. And yeah, so they can learn how to kind of they learn English, it betters their English, they can learn a bit of money, earn a bit of money, and also yeah, the travellers get to just meet a local and get that really unique perspective to anything to and then the local restaurants. So this is the Pawa restaurant on the bottom right there, which is in Peru in the Sacred Valley, and that is kind of really lovely gourmet food which is produced and made locally as well. Okay, so moving on to Peru. Yeah, what can I say about Peru apart from it's just it's incredible. Obviously a lot of people associate it with Machu Picchu, but it does have so much more there to it, which is just incredible. So how to get there? Again, we can't fly there directly from Manchester at the moment, unfortunately, but we can fly there indirectly via Madrid, Amsterdam or Paris. Or perhaps if you wanted to fly in via a different city, you could go from London directly to Buenos Aires or Rio or Santiago down in Chile, and then fly up to Peru. So there are a few different options there. And there's the Galapagos Islands as well. So some facts about Peru. Spanish is the main language which is spoken, but widely there are lots of other languages kind of in the different heartlands of the country. So there's 72 different languages and dialects actually. So yeah, it's really incredible. So anything from kind of Quechua in the Inca heartland, and you'll hear other words that you might not hear elsewhere. You might not have known that 3/4 of the world's alpaca population actually lives in Peru. so there's lots of opportunity to kind of see those lovely fluffy fluffy animals and have photos taken with them. The Incas were really in tune with the cosmos. This is a wonderful destination for people who are interested in photography, but also astronomy. So you'll see kind of in Machu Picchu, a lot of the temples within it are aligned to different constellations. And it's the same with Cusco, which is kind of the city that you go to, which is the gateway to Machu Picchu and the Inca kind of heartland. So really, really fascinating stuff. But yeah, Peru boasts so much more. It's a real foodie paradise. So when you're flying into Lima, which is the main capital city, you're just kind of, there are so many different options there for you to try. 3,000 plus varieties of potato, but there's amazing seafood. There's the chifa food, which is kind of an Asian Peruvian fusion, which is really, really lovely. As well as that, Peru offers deserts, mountains, beaches, rainforest, history, and then of course, really, really rich culture. Okay, so the best time to go to Peru. So May to October is the dry season, although the weather it does tend to vary the more inland that you go into Peru. So it's more mountainous Machu Picchu, and the higher altitudes will be slightly different. To give you an idea, the Inca Trail is closed in February, and that's traditionally a kind of, December, January is quite a wet time of year, so they use February as an opportunity to kind of clean it up a little bit. If you were going to Peru with a trek in mind, the best time to do it is during our summer months. Okay, so as before, I've got a map of Peru here. I'm just going to point out some of the key destinations that you might go to on a trip. So we've got Cusco, of course, which I mentioned before, which is the gateway to the Inca heartland. And if you're going to Machu Picchu, your trip will you'll start in Lima, but then Cusco is kind of the gateway to that area. Lake Titicaca, which is the highest navigable lake in the world and on the border with Bolivia. Really, really fascinating place. Lots of incredible history there. And Puerto Maldonado is where you would fly into if you're looking to stay at one of the Amazon lodges. The Tambopata region it's accessible, but it's not been too much affected by tourism. So it's still accessible, but yet still very wild. And Lima, as I said, mentioned before, the city that you're going to fly into, the main capital city of Peru. Arequipa, beautiful white city, as they call it. It's a beautiful kind of Spanish colonial city with, again, I mentioned before about photography. There are some really beautiful buildings there, really lovely architecture that you must see. And then the hearts that I'm highlighting in purple are other places you may go to if you have a bit more time there. So Nazca, a couple of hours drive from Lima, but it's possible and popular to take a flight over the Nazca lines, see those pre-Incan kind of outlines and the animals that are in the landscape there. Trujillo, which is further north. There's waterfalls up here. There's some more pre-Incan ruins. Sometimes these are kind of overlooked because of Machu Picchu, but there is some really interesting stuff in the north of the country as well. And Iquitos. So if you're interested in doing a cruise on the Amazon, your trip would start here. So you would fly into Lima and then take a flight north into Iquitos. And we have our very own cruise specialist here as well, Sam, who can advise you on that as well. So we could work together with that one. Okay. So just some more ideas for you. So the images here are of Lima. So you can see there it's on the coast. It's a really beautiful coastline. It's actually quite popular with surfers. When I've been there, I've seen people surfing in the ocean. Obviously, it's the Pacific. You don't always associate that with Peru, or at least I didn't before I went. And really nice kind of coastline, and that lends itself to more kind of diverse food as well. As you can see there, that's ceviche, which is kind of fish which is cooked in lime juices. It's quite acidic, but it's really, really lovely, very refreshing. And just Lima as a city itself is really lovely. Miraflores area is really popular. It's quite cosmopolitan, and you can wander around. There's lovely restaurants and beautiful buildings like you see there in the image. And then we have there one of the images from the Nazca lines as well. Okay. So these are some more photos just to give you a bit of an idea. Oh, my computer skipped ahead, I apologise. This is kind of the Sacred Valley area. I think aside from Machu Picchu, my favourite part of Peru. It's so peaceful there, kind of in the mountains. That image there is from a wellness centre. There are lots of really, really lovely and luxurious hotels there, as well as more kind of basic, depending on what you want from the trip. But the Sacred Valley is, I think, quite a spiritual sort of area. They have shaman ceremonies and things like that, but ultimately it's just really, really beautiful. And that's kind of just between Cusco and Machu Picchu, most trips will also include a bit of time in the Sacred Valley as well. The image on the right there, top right, is from the Inca Trail if you were to do the hike. And then some more images down there of Cusco itself, the city. So yeah, you would fly from Lima into Cusco, which is where you would go before Machu Picchu, and possibly spend a few days there to acclimatise, because it is at a higher altitude. But again, it's a really lovely place to kind of wander around and just get yourself familiar with the surroundings. It's really, really lovely. Again, wonderful hotels there, restaurants, lots of foodie experiences there, as well as great opportunities for photographers. And then Lake Titicaca. So the ancient Andean belief is that this is the birthplace of the sun. So depending on the time of year that you go there, obviously the ancient kind of Andean kind of Incas just are so kind of preoccupied with the cosmos. So it's really still a really strong belief there, and that culture is still very strong, and it's fascinating. So you can see kind of these ceremonies at different times of the year at Lake Titicaca, as well as other parts of the country as well. And the other images there are of the Amazon. So that's doing a bit of a walk through the Amazon and kind of looking at the plant life, as well as one of the river cruises there as well. I would say with the wildlife walks and with a guide, you would have the opportunity to go out both during the day and at night time and just see how different the wildlife is at those different times of day. And yeah, you'll get a more rounded experience of it. And that would be the same regardless of whether it was a tailor-made trip or a group trip. You know, that's kind of, you would have a guide there who could show you those items as well. Even if you're doing a more independent trip, you can still have a guide to go into these areas, which is recommended. Okay, so yeah, Machu Picchu looks okay, doesn't it? I've been really fortunate enough to see Machu Picchu during the rainy season, but also during the height of summer when it looks like this. And to me, it's just as beautiful whichever time you see it. If you go at a time of year where the weather is less clear like this, it just looks really mysterious. It's kind of shrouded in this mist, and you can just stand above it and just have a little look and just think, yeah, that looks nice. It just kind of, it's a very mysterious place, Machu Picchu, and you know, it's one of those things you really need a guide to see it, and to get the most out of it, and just to learn about every little nook and cranny of Machu Picchu as well. Okay, so how to get there? Okay, if you're looking to do a hike, there are lots of options. Anything from 3 days up to, I believe you could do up to 10-day hikes. This, of course, is not obligatory to get to Machu Picchu. There are many ways to get there. This is just one of them. And if you do take a hike, you'll be rewarded with views like this. You know, this is the Dead Woman's Pass on the Inca Trail, but there are other routes which are a bit quieter as well. So yeah, the other way to get there is by train, and there are a few different options to do this also. So the Peru Rail is a local company. I think they're comparable to probably the Rocky Mountaineer Silverleaf, if anybody's been to Canada, just because you've got those kind of panoramic windows in the roof, so you can take in all the beautiful kind of surroundings as you travel, which would be either from Cusco to Machu Picchu town, which is just outside the old ruins, or from Ollantaytambo, which is in the Sacred Valley, up to Machu Picchu town. So there are a few different rail options depending on your itinerary, whether that's tailor-made or part of a group. But Peru Rail is a lovely kind of local service. I've travelled on that myself, and I just thought it was lovely. And they provide you meals if you want them, and you can buy a beer and just sit back and take in the scenery. Really lovely. Another option, if you would like to be a little bit more, if you like to treat yourself something a bit more salubrious, is the Hiram Bingham, of course, the chap who rediscovered Machu Picchu in 1911, which is one of the Balmond Orient Express services, which is really, really beautiful. So this is a luxury train which operates between Cusco and Machu Picchu town. And this can be built into a tailor-made itinerary. So you could do that as a one-way option, or you could do it as a return. And you could combine that with a really luxurious hotel at either end, just to kind of complete the experience for you. But yeah, that's a real treat. And then touching back on the accommodation as well, like Costa Rica, there really is a wide range of accommodations in Peru. I'd say about both these countries, Costa Rica and Peru, and many others in Latin America, they have a really great tourist infrastructure. So there really is something for everyone, regardless of your style of travel, what you want as a person, and what you want to experience. And that's what we're here for. We can talk to you and find out a bit more about you and what you want from the trip, and pair you up with the right itinerary. But anything from the rustic lodges of the Amazon, that's this one here in the top left, to more kind of modern hotels, your Hiltons and the kind of the larger hotels in Lima, for example, small, Spanish colonial buildings. And if you did end up doing a hike or a trip that involved camping, certainly with G Adventures, you're very well looked after in terms of everything's included. The tent is pitched for you, and the food that these guys can knock up in the tent is amazing. I have seen a cake that's been baked in one of those tents, and yeah, it was quite something. Yeah, and it was quite tasty as well. So yeah, an example of an itinerary in Peru. So it's those places that we mentioned before. With it being National Geographic, again, as I said, it goes into a bit more depth. For example, you'll get to meet with an astronomer at Cusco Planetarium. So if you're really interested in that night sky, which inspired and influenced those ancient civilizations for so long, there's no better place really to do that than somewhere like Cusco. And of course, the night sky is going to be so different to what we see here. A naturalist guide in the Amazon jungle. The Tambo Pata Lodge that they use here in the Amazon is only accessible by canoe during daylight hours, and that's because they have lots of crocs and caimans, and which to me is quite appealing. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of how intense the wildlife is there. And this Peru as a country has so much there. Of course, the history, wildlife. I could go on, and a tour for Peru, starts from about around £2,200 for the tour on its own. And this is based on kind of a 4-star standard, and that's before we factor in flights, just to give you a bit of an idea there. And with Costa Rica, that one starts from around £1,999 for the 14 days for that one. And again, without flights. So just to give you a bit of a benchmark, really. And it would be a shame to not touch on the Galapagos Islands as we're talking about Latin America. It's a bucket list item for so many reasons and for so many people, I think. Of course, it could be a trip within its own right. There is so much there to see and do, and the islands have all got something different to offer. So I just thought I'd touch on this with a bit of information. And yeah, it's quite easily accessible from Peru via Quito in Ecuador. So you would fly up to Quito and then straight over to Santa Cruz, which is the island there in the middle with the star. And the best time of year to go is December to April, and you will see hordes of wildlife, whichever time of year that you go. If there's something specific you want to see, then you probably maybe need to narrow down when you want to go, but otherwise it's going to be a jamboree of different kind of animals, really. Yeah, it's great. Like this guy, one of the marine iguanas. I'm sure if you've seen the David Attenborough Galapagos show, which was a couple of years ago now, you'll know who these guys are, the Blue Footed Boobies, and the opportunities to go hiking in the lava fields as well. Best way to see the Galapagos really is by sea, just because traveling on land and using local boats, you need quite a bit more time to do it. To give you a bit of an idea of cost, the G Adventures cruise starts from around £4,500 for a 10-day itinerary, and aboard the Celebrity Fauna, flora, sorry, it's around about £5,000 for a 7-day itinerary, just to give you a bit of an idea there. And that's an example of kind of one of the tenders going into dock on one of the islands. So that concludes it really. I don't know if there are any questions at all. No. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you, Kerry. I mean, that was absolutely wonderful. And it did sort of make me think. I have been to Costa Rica, and actually it might surprise you to know that I have zip line there as well, only because everybody else was doing it and I thought I was being very silly doing it, but actually I had a ball. And then in Guatemala, I actually did some river rafting. So although we sometimes think that we're not going to be that adventurous, once we get into the area, it it sort of gives you that feeling that you want to, push yourself a little bit further and do that sort of thing. But what always amazes me about Latin America is the passion that people have for their country. I mean, they really know a lot about their history and their culture. We visited some Mayan ruins in Guatemala, and they were stunning. I mean, it's like being in another world. So I am yet to get to Machu Picchu, but should have gone there last year. Like so many people, it just didn't happen. Now, I have had a couple of questions actually, so I'm going to put it to you, the expert. I know that sometimes people worry about breathing problem, the altitude sickness that you can sometimes get when you go up to Machu Picchu. People sometimes ask us about that. How do you cope with it?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is nobody really knows if they're going to be affected by altitude sickness or not. And all you can do is just take all the precautions that if you do get a little bit poorly, that you're taking care of yourself and that you're going to overcome that. So what most tours, most tailor-made itineraries will include at least 2 nights in Cusco, which is the highest kind of point before Machu Picchu in Peru. So it's actually higher than Machu Picchu. Drink lots of water, rest up, look after yourself, don't go heavy on the beers, and you'll be fine usually. Absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, they know how to handle it, don't they?
absolutely.
The guides have seen it all before, and it doesn't happen to everyone, but at least they've got experience with it.
Yeah.
The other thing is the cost of living. What sort of prices are out there?
Yeah. So they'll vary. I think we've mentioned this. I mentioned this with you before, Anne. Is that somewhere like Costa Rica is probably the most expensive country in Central America compared to its neighbours, and often we go abroad somewhere expecting the prices to be really, really low, and sometimes we're surprised when they're not. I still think Costa Rica is quite a reasonable country, and you can get a decent meal, probably for the equivalent of $10 to $15, for a nice evening meal. If you go to a small local restaurant, like they call them sodas, you could spend $5 or $6 on a small casado kind of traditional rice and beans, really lovely meal. So it depends really on where you go and what you're wanting from the experience. And of course in Peru as well, there are lots of options, especially in Lima, where you can have some really gourmet experiences, which you would pay a lot more for, more like $50, $60. Yeah.
It's nice to have that choice, and it's nice to have the diversity. And talking about that, because you did say that diversity was going to be the word that you use quite a lot. Looking at the map there that you showed about Costa Rica, the neighbouring countries are quite diverse, aren't they? And it is quite nice to marry up different neighbouring countries to get a wider picture.
Absolutely. And you mentioned yourself Guatemala. So Guatemala has a really rich cultural heritage. You're going kind of into the Mayan sort of civilization there, of course. So I think so Costa Rica, which is it really packs a punch with nature and volcanoes and the beaches and rainforests. Actually combining that with someone like Guatemala, which is more culturally rich, and you've got Tikal and all those ancient ruins, is a perfect combination. And even Costa Rica and Nicaragua, which is the country north, is completely different as well, but for different reasons. So you really can yeah, I could go on. There are lots of different permutations you could do for just Central America without even touching on the South. So yeah, really interesting place, very diverse.
I could just talk to you all day about this, but I guess we're going to have to cut it somewhere. So I'm just going to thank you so much. And I think everybody, you can see how passionate Kerry is about this area and how knowledgeable and how useful that is to you when you're planning a holiday that to an area that you really know nothing about, and perhaps you've only got 2 or 3 weeks, and you just want to do the best that you can within that time. So please come and have a chat with Kerry if there's any of that interests you at all. For next year, for the year after, we're able to talk to you about those itineraries. So thank you so much, Kerry. Very, very interesting. Now, we're going to have a little break from these episodes for a little while, but we're very excited about the 17th of August because we're going to be launching a brand new USA program for you to consider. We're going all over the States, and we're going into some detail about some very popular areas. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but keep your eye open for our e-blasts on our social media and on our website, because we've got quite a bit to tell you on the 17th of August. So if the USA and parts of it that you've not been to before, you might have done 2 or 3 bits, but there might be other areas that you want to visit. Join us then and we will reveal all. Do take care of yourselves. From Kerry and I, bye for now. Bye.